Do you like to play games?
What does it say, girl?
It says hide and seek. Are we really gonna play that?
You're not.
Good luck.
Welcome back to K-Movies Worldwide. Here's another movie recap and commentary, created for busy folks like you. Before we start, kindly help this small channel grow by clicking like and subscribe. This might be a simple gesture for you, but it is definitely a huge help for us. Thank you. The movie kicks off with siblings Daniel and Alex Ladumas sprinting frantically through the shadowy corridors of an enormous estate. In a panic, Daniel shoves Alex into a cabinet, urging him to stay hidden. Just then, a bloodied man in a tuxedo clearly desperate pleads with Daniel for assistance. But instead of helping, Daniel calls out loudly, betraying the man with a chilling shout, saying he is in here. The remaining members of the Ladumas clan rush into the room, striking the man. Helene, dressed as the bride, pleads with them desperately to stop the violence. But as the man is dragged away by force, Helene gathers herself, trying to stay composed in the face of horror. We then fast forward 3 decades. A young woman named Grace sits in Alex Ladumas' room, wearing her wedding gown. Today is her big day as she is about to marry Alex, although his wealthy family isn't fond of her and suspects her motives. Grace's love for Alex is sincere. She's thrilled at the thought of becoming one of them. Before the ceremony, Alex pulls her aside and quietly tells her there's still time to walk away. But Grace silences his concerns with a kiss, full of conviction. They head to the estate's garden, where Grace poses for wedding portraits. During this moment, we meet the eccentric relatives, the stern and intense Aunt Helene, the sarcastic Daniel, his snobby wife, Charity, their pompous father, Tony, and the kind-hearted matriarch, Becky. Now that we've been introduced to the supporting cast, the story moves forward. The wedding takes place in the lavish courtyard, and Grace and Alex joyfully walk down the aisle as husband and wife. Later that night, after all the festivities wind down, the couple sneaks away to a private room, Daniel's old bedroom, now theirs for the night. Just as Grace is hoping for intimacy, Aunt Helene interrupts and informs them that the family is requesting their presence. Noticing Grace's confusion, Alex explains that it's a family custom, and that is, whenever someone marries into the Ladumas family, they must participate in a game at midnight. This tradition, honoring the family's board game empire, is a rite of passage for any newcomer tonight. That's Grace. Rather than nervous, Grace seems intrigued by the idea. She follows the group downstairs into the music room, where everyone is waiting. Becky, Alex's mother, quietly approaches Grace and asks her to convince Alex to reconnect with the family and embrace his birthright as the future leader of the Ladumas legacy. Grace is unsure of what to make of this but agrees politely. We are then introduced to Alex's wild sister Emily, who struggles with addiction, her husband Fitch, clearly in it for the perks, and their 2 kids, who have just shown up. Once the children are put to bed by one of the maids, the family gathers in the game room. Tony begins telling the tale of their ancestry and explains the rules of what's about to happen. To sum it up, a long time ago, their forefather, Victor Ladumas, encountered a mysterious man named Mr. LaBelle, who gifted him a strange, magical box. Following that encounter, the family became incredibly wealthy. To honor the benefactor, the family agreed to play a game using the box whenever someone new joins them. The process is simple. Insert a blank card into the box, and Mr. LaBelle will choose the game there to play that night. All Grace has to do is pull the card and say aloud what's written on it. It reads hide and seek. Then Grace smiles, asking if they will really play it. Alex looks tense, and an eerie stillness settles over the room. Grace, still bubbly and unaware of the danger ahead, is told she must hide while everyone else counts to 100 and begins the search. Tony assures her they'll switch off the security system because the family insists on sticking to tradition, playing the game the old-fashioned way with no tech involved. Grace heads off to hide, while the family, excluding Alex, starts gearing up with vintage weapons passed down through generations. Grace squeezes into a dumbwaiter while back in the game room, Alex sits in conflict, torn between protecting Grace and his family's deadly ritual. Charity is posted at the door to ensure Alex doesn't leave, but as she's distracted, Alex sneaks out through a hidden panel that leads into the servants' hallway. By the time Charity checks in, she realizes he's vanished. Still tucked inside the dumbwaiter, Grace grows restless. She climbs out, narrowly avoiding a maid who's searching for a wandering child. Then Alex pulls her aside just in time as the maid steps into the room. Suddenly, Emily fires a shot, killing the maid by mistake. Grace is frozen in horror. The family inspects the body and scolds Emily for her mistakes. She was supposed to target Grace. Once the body's dragged away, Alex explains the truth. Grace drew the worst card possible, and that was hide and seek. Now, according to the family's belief, they must kill her before sunrise or face dire consequences. The couple flees through the hidden passage. Grace begins to break down, overwhelmed by what she's learned. Alex confesses he never expected her to pull that cursed card. He says he had hoped to just live with her, but proposed because he knew she wanted something real. now determined to protect her. He tells Grace to head toward the kitchen exit while he makes his way to the control room to unlock the house. They split up, and Grace tears part of her dress so she can move more easily. At the corridor's end, she's faced with 2 doors. She picks the left and walks right into a room full of her pursuers. She spins around and comes face to face with Emily, who panics and fires wildly, missing every shot. Grace dodges past. She tries to escape but discovers the doors and windows are locked tight. Cornered and terrified, she backs against the wall, only to see Daniel calmly step into view. Instead of attacking, he strolls over to the pool table, grabs a drink, and then tells Grace that he won't hurt her but he will alert the others. However, he will still give her a 10-second head start before he calls the others. One by one, the family members reach the study, only to realize Grace is no longer where she was supposed to be. A maid rushes in and Emily accidentally shoots her too. Frustrated, Helene reminds everyone they have only until dawn to complete the ritual. Becky suggests they break with tradition and use the security feed. They all agree and spread out to hunt. Grace spots the game room and grabs a shotgun from a display case. She heads for the kitchen, waiting for Alex to unlock the doors. But the butler enters, so Grace ducks into hiding. Meanwhile, Alex reaches the security room and reactivates the camera system, but the door locks won't respond. Grace, still hidden, realizes her gun is empty. She carefully loads it while the butler absent-mindedly prepares tea nearby. Alex types in override codes, finally unlocking the doors. This triggers an alert, and the butler heads toward the exit. Grace sneaks up and pulls the trigger, but nothing. The butler coolly explains the gun is a prop. Thinking fast, she smashes a teapot over his head. Tony begins banging on the door to get in, so Alex destroys the control panel to stop the surveillance system. When Tony bursts in, he lunges at Alex but Alex holds his own. Daniel intervenes, and Alex begs him to help Grace. But before Daniel can answer, Tony hit Alex in the head, knocking him out. Meanwhile, Grace continues to search for shelter. Then she found a terrified maid. Hiding inside the dumbwaiter, Grace told her, "Come with her." But the maid screams, accidentally hitting the button and sending the dumbwaiter upward, crushing her in a gruesome accident. Grace runs once more. Elsewhere, Alex has been knocked out and handcuffed to a bed in his old room. Helene claims Alex will soon come to his senses and embrace his role as the rightful heir of the Ladomas bloodline. Unbeknownst to them, Grace is just outside, listening through the window. She leaps down into the garden below, landing on a patch of shrubs. Now finally outside, she takes off running, then ducks into a barn when she spots a flashlight. To her surprise, it's just Georgie, Emily's young son. Grace steps out and knocks the boy out cold. Moments later, a goat startles her, causing her to fall into a pit filled with rotting corpses. Choking on the stench, she tries to climb out, but her hand is wounded. Just as she nears the top, the ladder snaps and she has no choice but to grab the edge using her injured hand, impaling it on a nail. Wincing in pain, she pulls herself up and staggers out of the pit. She tears her sleeve to make a makeshift bandage for her hand. Charity catches a glimpse of her leaving the barn and fires a shot but misses. Charity hurries back inside to inform the butler about Grace's location. Grace finally reaches the tall iron fence and squeezes through the gap. A car approaches on the road, and she yells for help only to watch in horror as it speeds past without stopping. She bolts into the woods, only to spot a vehicle leaving the estate. It's the butler, who immediately alerts the family that she's escaped. Back inside, panic spreads. Tony Ladumas and his clan become convinced they'll all perish by sunrise unless Grace is eliminated. Daniel, however, clearly doubts the superstition, which leads to a heated clash with his father. Tony begins to question where Daniel's loyalties lie. Alex regains consciousness in the bedroom and tries to break free from the handcuffs binding him. Daniel and Emily head to the barn to get rid of the servants' corpses. Daniel bitterly remarks that their entire family deserves what's coming, but Emily won't hear of it. Meanwhile, Grace emerges from cover and dashes through a wide field. The butler's car speeds toward her, and since he's been instructed to bring her back alive, he exits the vehicle and tackles her. Grace uses a torn piece of her dress to strangle him unconscious. She jumps behind the wheel and drives off. While fleeing, she calls the car's help service and begs them to contact the police. The operator agrees but also informs her the car was reported stolen and, per protocol, he remotely disables it. The vehicle grinds to a halt. Frustrated but slightly hopeful, Grace sits back, thinking help is on the way. Out of nowhere, the butler resurfaces and hits her with a tranquilizer dart, instantly knocking her out. Grace comes to, tied up in the back seat as the butler drives and video calls the family. She violently kicks and headbutts him, causing the car to crash. She crawls out of the wreck just as Daniel arrives with a shotgun. He confesses that he doesn't want her dead but he's too weak to resist his family. Grace pleads with him, insisting the curse isn't real and no one's going to die at dawn. With visible regret, Daniel knocks her out. Tony steps out from the trees, having secretly followed Daniel to test his commitment. Back in the mansion, Alex receives a visit from his mother, Becky, who tries to convince him to abandon Grace. She believes he'll eventually come back to the family's side, but Alex refuses. He declares Grace isn't twisted like the rest of them. Meanwhile, the family prepares the sacrificial ritual. Grace wakes up tied to the dining table as everyone chants and drinks from a ceremonial goblet. Tony raises a ceremonial dagger to end her life. Suddenly, the family starts choking. Daniel had spiked the drinks to save Grace. He quickly frees her, and they make their escape. At last, Alex manages to free himself as well. As Grace and Daniel run through the halls, Charity intercepts them with a pistol. She realizes Daniel isn't about to betray Grace. Without hesitation, Charity shoots Daniel in the throat. Grace tackles Charity, knocking her out cold, then turns to the dying Daniel, who urges her to run. Grace continues through the mansion and runs into Tony. She grabs a lantern and strikes him unconscious, then tosses the lantern, starting a fire. Alex searches the mansion and stumbles upon his dying brother. Daniel dies in his arms, and Alex is visibly shaken. In the dining room, Grace and Becky wrestle violently. Fueled by fury and desperation, Grace bashes her skull in, killing her just as Alex arrives. Alex walks up to her, grief-stricken. He tries to comfort her, but after losing his brother and mother, something snaps. He switches sides. The rest of the family joins him in the dining room, ready to try the ritual one last time. Flames from the lantern are spreading through the house. Unnoticed, Grace is pinned down on the table. Alex, with the knife in hand, moves to stab her. She squirms just in time and escapes their grasp. A ray of sunlight peeks through the curtains. It's morning. The family recoils in horror, expecting to die, but nothing happens. They seem fine until Aunt Helene explodes in a burst of blood and fire. One by one, the rest of the family follows, each combusting horrifically. As their remains burn, Grace laughs manically. Alex approaches her, trembling, hoping for forgiveness. But Grace is done. She coldly tells him she wants a divorce. As the room settles, the ghostly image of Mr. LaBelle appears briefly at the head of the table. Covered in blood, Grace exits the smoldering estate, sits on the front steps, and lights a cigarette. The police arrive and ask what happened. She simply responds, "It's the in-laws." Ready or Not is a wickedly fun blend of horror, dark comedy, and social satire. The film follows Grace, a newlywed who marries into a wealthy, eccentric family with a deadly tradition. She must survive a deadly game of hide-and-seek on her wedding night. What starts off as a quirky ritual quickly turns into a blood-soaked battle for survival. With sharp humor and a strong lead performance by Samara Weaving, the movie cleverly skewers the absurdity of the ultra-rich and the dark secrets they hide behind tradition and wealth. It's a fast-paced, gory thrill ride that keeps you guessing and laughing until its explosive ending.